Coogs House, the Houston Cougars head up to Ames, Iowa for the first road test of the Big 12 slate. What's in store up in the frozen tundra that is the winter wonderland of Iowa?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater can step by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way you listen to Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. And welcome back to the channel. That's where you found us. It's so good to see you again on YouTube. Remember to subscribe because we're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers. The next one of those is at 2,000, and we're approaching that big milestone. So subscribe, help us get there. Like and comment on the video so let us know you're in that contest. We're still figuring out what the giveaway will be, but like, comment. If you don't know what to say after this one, tell us, okay, first of all, do you eat egg salad? Second of all, what kind of bread do you put that egg salad sandwich on? All right, so today's episode is going to be all about Iowa State, as Houston is heading up to Ames, or I guess at this point, they're in Ames, Iowa. They got there as the snow was sticking to the ground on Monday for a conference contest as they make their way through the first round of Big 12 basketball. First segment, I want to talk some about what Iowa State looks like this year, just kind of overview of the team. They've had kind of an interesting year to look at from afar. I'm realizing, honestly, hadn't paid them much mind because of how many good basketball teams are in this conference till now, but stuff to pay attention to for sure. Second, I want to talk about player matchups because there's kind of a glaring hole for Houston, actually, that could come back to bite them. And so we'll see where that goes, what I think they'll do there, and we will see how that goes. And then in the third and final segment, I want to point out some Houston advantages I think they got in this contest tonight, Tuesday night. I think that Houston wins this game, but it is not going to be easy. They have to find those advantages and take them. But first, KenPom has Iowa State ranked as high as anyone on the Houston Cougar basketball schedule thus far. Iowa State is ranked 18th. The next highest team on KenPom in Houston's schedule has been Texas A&M. Utah was 31, Dayton was 32, and A&M is 34. So all right in that area. KenPom, the analytic site that does a bunch of looking at in-depth analysis as to who fits where in the grand total scheme of things, and has Houston first overall for what it's worth, has this team as noticeably higher ranked than anyone Houston's played thus far. Iowa State themselves sit right now at 11-3. Beat a handful of smaller schools. They beat VCU earlier this year. They kind of blew the doors off DePaul in a game I watched some of, blew the doors off of Iowa in a game I watched some of to get ready for this. Most recently lost Oklahoma. Oklahoma is in the top 20 right now for what it's worth, both in the AP poll and in that KenPom that we're alluding to earlier. But I think what's interesting to me is that as I look at this, the Texas A&M matchup for Iowa State was intriguing. Iowa State lost that game by 4 points on a neutral floor, not semi-neutral as Houston's Toyota Center visit with A&M was, obviously. And I think what's interesting there is I would have thought that game would have gone more Iowa State's way. So to see them lose that one by 4 was an interesting one, to say the least. I also should point out that this is one of the most raucous crowds in college basketball. That's not just me saying that because it's our first road game. They're notorious for having a crazy basketball turnout and crowd. Hilton Coliseum seats over 14,000 people. That's roughly twice the size of the Fertitta Center as far as butts and seats goes. It's their conference home opener. They announced last week on the 4th or 5th that it was a sellout with a very cool social media posting of things. I mean, they are ready to play Houston. They're ready for Houston to come, and they're ready to cheer against Houston. right? Now Iowa State plays a faster game in terms of number of possessions or how early in the shot clock they shoot the basketball than Houston opponents have thus far. Than Houston's allowed their opponent to thus far, I should say. Um, I don't know in watching that they're actually always in control of their pace in the way that makes it sound that they are. But I did think it's interesting that they play a fairly fast-paced level of basketball. When they win their games, they're scoring in the mid 80s and even 90s. Again, if they played DePaul, they scored 99 points. They played Iowa, they scored 90 points. They played Prairie View, and they've scored 107. That's an outlier. Prairie View is a much smaller program, obviously, right? But they also put up like 86 in Idaho State. They score a lot of points. High-scoring program for sure. They shoot it very well from behind the arc, and then I anticipated seeing a lot of threes getting jacked, and I saw their percentages, and then watch their games, and they're really not shooting that many shots from behind the three-point line. They do a lot more feast and famine in the mid-range and attacking the rim, but they do shoot relatively high percentage from behind the arc, so that's something for Houston to keep an eye on, because while it's not like a thing that seems like Iowa State's focusing on, it certainly is a thing that they're good at, and you'd hate for us to be the team that they came back and used that to win with. Watching their offense, they run what I'm in teams I've coached would call it weaves, where they're running a bunch of different actions that are more or less, they're not quite necessarily handing it off, but the ball just kind of swings around the three-point line with cuts and things like that afterwards. Sometimes it's a handoff, sometimes it's a ball screen, but a lot of like side-to-side action going kind of along the arc and kind of like a weave, right? Like a weave back and forth cross thing, right? They run 3 and 4 guard sets doing that. The big thing that Houston's got to watch out for when they're the over-aggressive defense Houston loves to play is that offense plus the kind of Houston defense that we're used to seeing lead to a lot of back cuts. Now, we know Houston's super disciplined and Sampson runs this defensive juggernaut that he runs, but also that hyper aggressive defense is susceptible to back cuts in this because the guy will stunt like he's going the weave. You kind of go through the motions, ready to jump the passing lane, jump the handoff or whatever, and he's backdoor for the backdoor cut. Now, they do typically have at least one, if not two, traditional post big men in the game, which can clog up the lane, hopefully makes Javier a big impact at the rim and defending shots. But they also have guards that are very willing to drop the ball off and stuff like that. So those are kinds of things that I see them doing well. All those back cuts, that weaving action, and kind of lull you to sleep, and then pop right behind you. Again, they play fast. It's not like a slow, monotonous offense. The weave is almost like catches you off guard. It's boom, boom. It's back and forth really quickly across the top. Interesting to see the combination of that offense and that speed, not shooting threes. And then the back cuts are constantly into big men down around the rim. That's their personnel. I'm not saying they could change anything about that. But it's interesting to see how all of that goes. Now, I watched, again, part of the Iowa game, part of the DePaul game, and most of their Oklahoma game and getting ready for this. So I admit that, like, they probably wrote out something different against Florida A&M or something like that. But I will say that in those, outside of those handful of games I saw, the only other 3 games I think would be worth seeing in this would be Virginia Tech, maybe VCU, and the A&M game. And admittedly, I guess 2 of those are losses. I counted the loss to Oklahoma that I saw them in as like the loss I watched. I try to find things that teams do well, and kind of that's the thing you want to make sure you stop. And so I watched the one loss was Oklahoma, but it was an interesting scout for sure. They've got some interesting matchups, one of which may be problematic for Houston, or at least as problematic as matchups go for Houston. But if we're going to talk about things that are problematic, we need to talk some about what to do if you got problems, or to prepare for problems at home. Because I know we come to this show often to talk about sports and escape from the crazy realities of real life, but we got to talk about preparing for that real life. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season over a decade, and that can be really scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if, like, my wife or my son got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from getting life-saving medical attention that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. All this stuff could happen to any of us, and Jase Medical has a way to keep yourself safe. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medication will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jasemedical.com. Use code LOCKED ON. Get $20 off your grade. That's Jase Medical, Jase medical.com. Use offer code LOCKED ON, LOCKEDON, to get $20 off first order. Jase Medical. Be prepared. All right, so the matchups here, I think there's a couple things. They're like, person they hang their hat on as their point guard. Most college basketball teams are that. His name is Tamin Lipsey. He's a 6'1" guard. He's also their high scorer. He's a good shooter, good distributor. He can put pressure on the defense at each level, but he's not like Raekwon Battle, 3-level scorer type guy. He's much more of sort of a crossover between that and a traditional 6'1" point guard. He does like to get downhill. He can shoot. He shoots on movement okay, which I think is important to note because he's not the only guy that handles the ball for them. But he's impressive. Tamin Lipsey is an impressive guard. I imagine he's the Jamal Shead matchup because he is that point guard, right? And shutting him down is so important. And at 6'1", he's a very size-wise perfect fit for Jamal Shead. Keshawn Gilbert is a second highest points per game man by just a couple decimal points. He's a 6'4" guard, and he's interesting because at 14 points per game or so, 6'4", you think about a guard, modern basketball, you think of shooter, and he's much more of like a broad shoulder, long arms, attacking the rim. Was impressed by the strength in which he finishes around the rim with. He really does, finish well, putting his shoulder into folks and kind of navigating the contact at the rim. He doesn't get a ton of free throws. He's not like, I don't know, a foul baiter or whatever, trying to think of a more clever phrase than that. But he does shoot 6 of them a game. So that indicates, again, attacking the rim at a good clip, but not like flopping and flailing and getting things. He's just going through people when he gets there. Again, 14 points per game, finished pretty well around the rim. Impressive young man. The interesting matchup to me, actually, I'll save him for the end. Trey King is their power forward. He's 6'9". He's more of a traditional. It's almost like a second center. He has a lot of back to basket kind of stuff. They start him over smaller people. They pull in sometimes go 4-guard stuff. But he's a 6'9" traditional big. Again, I put in my notes here: second center, smaller center. He's getting over 5 rebounds a game. A lot of putbacks, a lot of finishes around the rim. He can put the ball on the ground, but not in a way that he's trying to score. He's just not like incapable of dribbling it from 15 feet down to 5 feet and then backing you into the basket, right? The other big man, I assume, will be Robert Jones. He started the majority of the games this season after Hanson Ward, I think, must have gone down hurt or something. But Hanson Ward did play in the Oklahoma game, so I think they will both play. But Robert Jones is a 6'10", a very traditional center, scores from the blocks and in, well over 5 rebounds per game. And he's the guy I imagine gets to start for them as well. So I imagine Trey King gets Jawan Roberts. I imagine Robert Jones gets Javier Francis. Could see those interchanged based on who Sampson company I think is more dangerous, and those kinds of things. But Jones being closer to the rim at all times makes me think that you probably put Javier there so he can kind of work as a help rim defender at all times as well. That's my initial 2 cents. I also know that when they bring in that fourth guard at different sets, we'll talk about the bench in a second, but when they bring the fourth guard, that'll probably be more of a J1 matchup because, frankly, you want to make sure that he has his feet along the perimeter and you keep Javier down by the rim. In those 4 spots, I think Houston matches up fine from a size perspective. The interesting one will be, I'm going to try my best with this guy's name, Milan Mamaklovic. Milan. 6'8" and change, long arms. I think he looks taller than 6'8" on film and TV. Shoots 43% from behind the arc, doesn't get a whole lot of shots off because the way this weave offense works, it's not like a whole lot of catch and shoot opportunities for him. He's getting 13 and a half points per game, averaging 3.5 rebounds. He's their quote small forward. Now he plays along the perimeter, and so I imagine Houston starts with Emanuel Sharp on him for the game because there was nothing about his game at the perimeter that would worry me about Emanuel Sharp. Right, Emanuel Sharp's a strong kid, long arm kid, and as we talked about in yesterday's episode, has developed into a very good defender. My worry is the basketball coach in me sees an 4 or 5 inch, if not more, difference in height, plus the wingspan that I would imagine goes Milan's way as well. I'm thinking Iowa State finds a way to get him isolated to the block, back to the basket kind of stuff, because he is a scorer by trade. And I would worry about that. And this one, Houston not having a bunch of 6'7" plus type guys can be problematic. Now, Emmanuel's broad-chested and do a great job defending it. I could also see Malik Wilson coming off the bench helping this. Damian Dunn as well has a very sturdy base under him as he's, could fight against getting back down the post and those kind of things against this guy. So there are other options. And I stress the stuff that Milan does along the perimeter, I am not worried about Emanuel Sharp stopping. It's if they did something different, right? But there is that problem to me now. They also, I mentioned Hanson Ward as I was talking about, Robert Jones. For a couple of games this season, they started Hanson Ward. He's a 6'9", like 215, crazy athlete. I'm not worried about him with the ball in his hands as much, but think putback dunks. I mean, he had a putback dunk on a free throw. I think it was the Oklahoma game that will make you raise your eyebrows. Impressive athlete. Very, very talented athlete. He comes in off the bench for them. Curtis Jones is a 6'5" senior guard who comes off the bench for them, but is also their fourth most in minutes per game. When they go to a 4-guard lineup with one of those big guys down low, he's one of the guards they bring in. He's getting nearly 10 points per game off of the bench. Curtis Jones is, a pretty good shooter from behind the arc, 35%. What I thought was interesting is to see that his average is over 5 attempts per game, because in what I was watching, there's sometimes where he is not even getting the looks, and there's sometimes where they're just force feeding him. So I think that's where his average comes in against Houston to keep up with Houston's scoring. I wonder if they try and pump him the ball some, and frankly, to keep up with Houston's ball pressure, while size could be their advantage, I could also see the Iowa State coaching staff thinking they need to have more ball handlers on the floor, right, and having him in the game a lot more. The other thing I would say is I was impressed by Jackson Pavletsky. He's a Wofford transfer. Now, Pavletsky is a guy that I think is still finding his role on this team. He's averaging in the mid-teens in minutes per game. He's not a starter. But when he comes in, he is a 6'3" guard that I think at Wofford had some success scoring the basketball. You can see some fluidity in his movements and stuff like that. But at Iowa State, he's having 5 points per game. I say that to say that they play him a decent amount. Again, he's averaging in the teens in minutes per game. He's, I guess, technically, if you go to minutes per game, he's their 8th guy, right? But I think that the interesting thing in comparing benches here is that he has not shown crazy good scoring output at Iowa State. But in his career, he is more like a 10 to 12 point per game scorer if you go back to Wofford. So honestly, I could see him having a breakout at some point this year. If you're Houston, you don't want that to be us. I think Houston's bench is better because it goes a true 9 deep. I think Ramon Walker could play an interesting role in this game in the way he matched up with guys bigger than him. I think you'll see Damian Dunn come in and do some good work in this game because the way he, can isolate and get buckets. I think Malik Wilson's length will be important if they can get to him in this game. Then Jojo Tugler, if they want to go do a true 3 big lineup, would be really fun and interesting to see happen as well. Jojo's energy is going to be needed to kind of help quiet that crowd in Ames, Iowa. I'm taking Houston's bench and frankly starters as well. But I think it's interesting that look at Iowa State as a roster is frankly, one that, while it's not like the number one team in the country or anything, does offer Houston some problems. I think that there's things Houston taking advantage of in the third segment. I want to talk about that in a moment. But if we're talking about things to take advantage of, you guys need to go over and check out FanDuel.com and take advantage of this deal if you have not already, because the NFL regular season is wrapped up. Playoffs start this weekend. Houston's in them. But there's still time to get in on the action at FanDuel, America's number one sports, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed as long as you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. So you go to FanDuel.com, download the app, check it out, and they've got the Houston Texans as a 2.5-point dog at home. And the money line's at plus 120 this weekend playing the Browns. I'm telling you, that's ludicrous. Go to FanDuel.com, check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. So the biggest advantage I see in this game is in all three games I watched competitive games the best I could. I mean, rivalry game in Iowa and DePaul being a group of 5 team I wanted to watch and stuff like that. I thought it was interesting to look that Iowa State did play at good pace, at fast pace, a pace they were comfortable in, but did not appear to be controlling the pace of the game in the way Houston dictates the pace in every game they play. I think Houston, Jamal Shead, LJ Cryer, controlling the pace in this basketball game is going to be really, really important. And I frankly can't think of another point guard in college basketball I would trust to do it more than I trust Jamal Shead. So I'm confident in Houston controlling that element of this basketball game. Controlling the pace is important for a number of reasons, but one, it means that when you're going fast because you're comfortable with that offense, you're comfortable with the baskets you're getting, the looks you're getting, and frankly, with the inverse, that the looks you're giving up, the things you're doing on defense. It also means that when things are getting chaotic, you miss a couple of shots in a row, you control and can slow yourself down to breathe, right? I think Houston will do that very well in this game, not just because they've done it well all year, but because I didn't see Iowa State always in control of that to the same degree on their own. I also think it's the kind of game where, bluntly, Houston's going to find someone that shoots the ball well. I anticipate that being Emanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer. In all 3 games I watched, Iowa State was very much willing to give up open shots. I say willing because they did. I guess I should probably point out that that's not like something people just do, but they're giving up like pretty decent, like over 33% from behind the arc to opponents. Their opponents are scoring a lot at the rim, but I think that's honestly just because they're trying to, attempt to get foul trouble on the bigs down low for Iowa State. I didn't see too much into that. I think Houston will be able to do a good job from getting shots up from behind the arc. And if they can find some combination guys that are hitting to do it, whether that's Shed himself or Sharp or Cryer or Dunn or Ramon or whoever, right? It's going to be really important to find that combination, obviously. But putting those guys in the right place to be successful is going to be important in this basketball game. I'm kind of alluded to it when I was talking about the bench in this game as well. I think a big advantage for Houston is going to be pulling up an energy guy like Jojo Tugler off the bench. Again, when I talk about pace and speed and all of that, Hanson Ward's a great athlete, and I don't mean this disparagingly to him as an athlete. I was impressed watching him on film. But there's no athlete like Jojo Tugler that immediately flips the switch and the whole game looks like it's moving at a different speed when he's in there, right? That's something I'm eager to see Houston take advantage of in this basketball game as we get ready for our first road test. I'm predicting a Houston 12-point win. I'm going to go 75-63. Now, that'd be Houston's defense giving up more points than it really has for most of the season. But I think you're on the road. They're a good basketball team, hostile environment. Your first one of these in the conference. I'm envisioning all of those things playing out where Houston gives up 63 points. I'm picturing a win 75-63. Tell me what you think in the comments down below. Now, a note that I said yesterday, but I want to reiterate. Obviously, if you follow me on social media, follow me on X or Twitter or whatever social media service, Instagram, TikTok, etc. at Painsworth512. Painsworth 512. I typically live tweet the game. I'm tweeting out what's happening as it's happening, what my thoughts are, etc. And I frankly have great interactions with everyone watching the game along with me. We're all talking together. It's fun. Most games, I'd say log on to X, find me, let's do it. But this game, as I introduce myself every time, I'm a Houston-born teacher and coach. I have my own basketball game at high school level that I'm coaching in. We tip off within 30 minutes, actually 30 minutes after the Houston game starts. So I will be watching this very literally on tape delay. The plan is my game goes according to plan and the Houston game goes according to plan. That I come home from my game, I'm eating dinner, pull out my phone, and I watch the game later than most over the course of the night, and then hopefully record something about a great Houston Cougar victory afterwards. Now, we do have stuff ready to push to you on Wednesday, no matter what happens on the plan, if all that goes haywire. But that's the game plan right now, is to have a delayed reaction to the game, obviously in person. It's not that I won't probably see the score at some point or whatever, but delayed reaction to the game. Then late night making of the video for you guys to go out on Wednesday morning. If something were to go wrong with that, we do have stuff in the back pocket ready to go. But just want to let you know that's the deal there. Now, as far as getting ready for TCU next weekend, TCU game obviously is a big one for Houston as well. Another road game. We do have a crossover locked on TCU for that one as well. So we're going to kind of get ready for that by Saturday. So lots of fun Houston Cougar things going on here each and every day at Locked On Coogs. So make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you follow us every morning. Make sure you hit alerts for notifications. Hit the bells for dings on YouTube. Everything so you get the latest as soon as it hits. Follow me on social media at all things, all platforms at Painsworth 512, Painsworth 512 on all forms of social media, including X/Twitter/ whatever you'd like to call it. Again, thank you all so much for making us your first listen, Locked On Coogs, Locked On Podcast Network. And as a second listen, I'm going to recommend Locked On College Basketball. It's a great show. Andy and Isaac talk all things college hoops. I was texting with them tonight about Iowa State. They watch them a little bit as well as they're getting ready for their national show each and every day. So make sure you go check them out for a second lesson. Locked On Coogs is powered by Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, our Cougs, every day. Go Cougs.